Hello, everybody. My name is Maurice Button. I'm the CEO of City and Financial Global, and it's my great pleasure to be interviewing Natalie Wharton, who's Managing Director of Wharton Business Consulting today. This interview is in connection with our forthcoming event, the 8th Annual Culture and Conduct Forum for the Financial Services Industry, being held in London on the 29th of November. Natalie, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Lovely to have you here with us. So with no further ado, Natalie, let's turn to the questions, if we may. How much progress do you think leaders have made in changing culture and conduct over the last 5 years or so? Do you think it's still near or at the top of the boardroom agenda?
Thank you. I think this is a really interesting question, as a significant amount of progress has been made. Financial services had seen a significant shift in the appetite and understanding and debate around culture and conduct, and very much also at the boardroom and not just through the organisation. Often financial services is cited as an industry that those outside of financial services can learn something from. But to your point, how much progress has been made? Well, we're often supporting organisations, not just leading culture change projects, but actually coming in to rectify those programs that actually haven't quite made it and made the successes they were looking for. And why is that? There are many reasons and drivers for those projects not succeeding in the culture change. But I would say fundamental to it is people's appreciation that culture evolves. Culture and conduct is a living organism, and many of those programs try to do a point in time appreciation of culture and change, or indeed just very much scratching the surface. And we know that there's a lot of drivers, there's a lot that actually influences your culture, whether it be regulatory pressures, economic, social economic, geopolitical, or indeed technology changes. But there are very much pivot points in industry. So we've seen in financial services in 2008 with the financial crisis, the pandemic in 2020, and actually thinking more recently with the recession in 2022, we very much don't appreciate sometimes those changing points and that need to constantly look at our culture. So yes, we've made progress, but we need to keep thinking about it and evolving it. And actually, if I may, Maurice, just thinking about right now where we are seeing organizations at the top level looking at actually how they might cut headcount, how they might make quite ruthless changes to their organization. Yet further down the chain, back in sort of line managers and the employees, they've had quite a lot of power recently, just because a shift in talent mix, a shortage of talent, and actually the pressure on prices, meaning they've been able to ask for higher salaries. But now that dynamic is once again going to change and culture going to evolve. So really, organizations have made progress. It is very much at the boardroom. However, they can't stop really looking at and thinking about culture.
Yeah, that's a very interesting response. Yeah, I totally agree. It's an ongoing thing, and it's subject to all the different crises that people are having to deal with at the present time. And you're right that for a while at least, there's more power for line managers and employees. But that's changed a bit, and the whole time that there's been huge pressure on mental health issues, which really have come to the fore in recent years. I do think that leaders have done enough to promote well-being in their organisations, and if not, what else do you think they should be doing?
What I think is interesting about this question is, what is enough? How do you measure enough? What was more than enough pre-pandemic is now just scratching the surface. And enough is quite unique to all organisations. Yes, we have seen a huge progress in this area, and I would say a lot of organisations have really leaned into looking at mental health, and we've seen that actually it's costing our economy sort of 118 billion a year. So it really needs to stay front and center of the mind. But mental health and well-being as just one element of that well-being. So, we talk about physical, social, financial, professional well-being, as well as this emotional well-being. So it's really important that organizations think of all of it. And it's tough, right? I'm a business owner, and what I do is very much continually ask, observe, and test and adapt to enable and ensure that my workforce are being looked after, and at the same time balancing profitability. So for organizations for many years, actually their culture and their way of working in the office has kind of looked after a bit of the well-being, that sort of connectedness and social network in the office has enabled people to have a voice, have some support, some communication. So with all of that changing and them leaning in, it has been quite hard for them to adapt. And we've got some great examples. Organizations have thought about psychological safety. As an organization, we support businesses thinking about psychological safety, and the work of Megan Wrights and around mindfulness. We've seen a huge uptick in organizations requesting support in that and understanding. We've seen organizations very much focusing on D&I, and for me, although they're only starting to really look at that, at least they're understanding and wanting to understand what their data is and what it's telling them, and talking and enabling people to really raise issues there, and the whole social network and connectivity. But all I would suggest for organizations is to continue to understand, continue to appreciate things evolve, and yes, keep doing great work to move towards an organisation that's really focused on its employees' well-being.
And I suppose, in a sense, well-being and having a good culture, they go in line with profitability, long-term profitability at least. So, it's in their interest to do that. Turning to another issue, whistleblowing. This has been a very difficult issue for financial services leaders. On the one hand, they do want to have a speak up culture. On the other hand, they're a little worried about what might happen. How do leaders get this balance right, and also how should they protect whistleblowers?
That's a really good point around the protection of whistleblowing. I think, as having dedicated my career to helping businesses transform through their people, through their culture, and ultimately that's underpinned by their processes, the whistleblowing process has been one that I believe has rarely been successful, has rarely made a difference and an impact. Yet a lot of organizations focused on their whistleblowing scores to see how well they were doing in culture. And even over the last 5 years, we've seen organizations creating an environment where that channel has started to enable people to speak up, creating that environment. But as we've seen, take the case in point with Barclays and the chief executive there trying to unmask the whistleblower. That has really left a ricochet through the industry and that organization around the the trust in that channel. So what's key for organizations is not just to rely on that formal, very black and white, very formulaic process, but actually to put in place other channels. Because the work that we do with John Higgins, one of our researchers from Astridge, we look at 4 barriers to speaking up. There's fear, fear of reprisal, fear of what it might mean for others, multitudes of fear. There's futility, and actually people feeling, well, will you listen to me? Will you do anything about it? Or when you do something about it, it's 9 months later and the issue's gone away. Channels and navigation. So the third one there around, yes, whistleblowing is there and it's something that's been stipulated and it's a channel that we should use and is there. But what about the other channels? How do I raise, this doesn't feel right, but I don't want to go through the formal channel because I might be wrong. It may have just been someone's behavior on one instance, or it might have been something I observed that actually that's my perception and bias on that situation. So you have to enable there to be other channels for people to speak up. And then lastly, blind spots. People's appreciation that they should raise this. No, their line manager may not have seen it, may not observed it, but actually everyone is accountable, and so ensuring that there's no blind spots. So I think it's a really important topic. It increases in its importance. I know very much the FCA, they're very much focused on enabling psychological safety in organisations for speaking up. But organisations need to keep pressing on that button, keep creating psychological safety at an organisational, individual and team level, because that will keep pushing us forward as an industry.
Fascinating. Well, I could continue this conversation for a lot longer, Natalie, but sadly our time is up. So thank you very much for joining us today. And for our viewers, just to remind you that the conference, the 8th Annual Culture and Conduct Forum for the Financial Services Industry, is happening in London on the 29th of November. We very much hope you'll be able to join us in person. So with no further ado, thank you very much, Natalie.
Thank you. Great to be here.